All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Martin. Welcome back to Fanon International Boxing. We're going to talk about Jermell Charlo straight checking Danny Garcia and saying, man, check my resume. I'll fight anyone, anytime. To set up what I believe is going to be a huge payday for both of them, let's talk about a potential fight between Jermell Charlo and Danny Garcia in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Danny Garcia, who is a former 135-pound champion, a former 140-pound unified champion, a former 147-pound champion, who recently just lost his last fight, a title shot against Errol Spence in Dallas, lost to that by 12-round unanimous decision. He announced maybe 2 days ago that he is going to be moving from 147 to 154. More importantly, he said that immediately he will be the big man in that division because he's the biggest draw. He's the one with the biggest name recognition, and that's going to be the deal, right? So Jermell Charlo, Jermell Charlo, that's a wild boy. He ain't going to go and let that be unresponded to, or he's not going to let that go without comment, because clearly the biggest man and the best fighter at 154 pounds is Jermell Charlo. Jermell Charlo is dominating that division as thoroughly as anybody else is dominating their division, without a doubt. He's more dominant than anybody at 100 at heavyweight in their division, more dominant than anybody, any cruiserweight, light heavyweight, 168 pounder, 160 pounder, you name it. There ain't nobody in boxing more dominant in their weight division than Jermell Charlo. The only person right now that I think where you could make that argument that they are like that in their division is Teofimo Lopez, who holds 3 belts in the lightweight division. And even there's a question mark. Number one, because the dearth of talent is just not as deep as 154. And also the fact that he didn't fight Devin Haney yet, and is not, he has a funny situation over there with Devin Haney. So really the most dominant fighter as a boxer in their weight division is Jermell Charlo. And you can go back and look at, like, besides the fact that he's unified with the WBC, the WBA, and the IBF, he's also beaten guys at that weight class like Charles Hatton, Erickson Lubin, Austin Trout, Tony Harrison. He has potential fights there with Jared Hurd and Brian Castano, and the fight with Brian Castano would make him an undisputed champion, right? So if you just look at the track record of Jermell Charlo in that weight division, there's just no way that anybody could say anybody but he, besides him, is the top guy in that division. So what was Danny Garcia saying? Now, what Danny Garcia is saying is true, that he probably is, as far as boxing names, the biggest name in boxing that is fighting at 154 pounds, right? And, we may not like it, and people may look and say, hey, look what he did at 147. But, man, Danny Garcia has been making huge fights for a very long time, man. And sometimes I think it's just really good to go back, when you think about Danny Garcia, go back and look at the names of the people that he's had fights with, right? He's beaten Eric Morales, Zab Judah, Lucas Matisse, Lamont Peterson, Guerrero. He lost to Porter, Thurman, and Spence, but all of those were very close fights, and all of them were big fights, big attractions that made big money, right? So I don't think, Danny Garcia is not somebody that's just going to jump out there and say stuff that's not true, man. I got a lot of respect from that cat from Philly. Really, really good dude. I like his father. I know people say things about his father and how he flies off or whatever, but hey, man, I'm 100% supporter of Angel Garcia because I like what that dude has done with his family. And the word of the mouth is that they've got a really good reputation in Philly, that they work with the other fighters like Jerron Ennis and all these other cats out of Philly, and that they really do bond as a community in the Philadelphia boxing community. So I really have a lot of respect for those guys. And it wouldn't be true if I was to sit up there and say, no, Jermell Charlo is a bigger earner. He's the bigger name than Danny Garcia. And Danny Garcia, because that's just not the case, dude. Danny Garcia, without a doubt, is a big name in boxing. He's a pay-per-view fighter. And the fight between he and Jermell is a fight that I would pay big money to see. Now, As far as Jermell Charlo and him happening and what happens in that fight, look, man, Jermell Charlo, in my opinion, is a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter in his weight class, and that fight itself, it would not go very well for Danny Garcia. I just think that he gets, I think that he's just too big. I think that also that he is going to be long enough to continually stick him with a jab that Danny Garcia is just not going to be able to do anything with. I just think that matchup is one for the first time that Danny Garcia that fight could literally get stopped in the middle of the rounds, right? Now, saying that he will be able to stop Danny Garcia is a big thing, man. Okay, that's a big thing because Danny Garcia, say what you want about Danny Garcia losing to Spence, losing to Porter, losing to Thurman. Both the Porter and the Thurman fights, in my opinion, could have went either way. And in the second half of the fight, Danny Garcia was walking those dudes down. And those guys that he lost to are definitely, like, some people will argue and say that I throw Hall of Fame around too easily. But really, I think that that's true. I think Errol Spence Jr. is definitely on the path to being a Hall of Fame fighter. I think Sean Porter is on the path to be a Hall of Fame fighter. And Keith Thurman, if he can regenerate and get a good, get another title, get on a good run, right, that he has the potential to be a Hall of Fame fighter, right? From the belts that he's owned and the people that he's beat, if he can make that comeback, he's a Hall of Fame level fighter. A better way to say it, I guess, is they could be considered in the future to be Hall of Fame candidates, right? So looking at those losses from Danny Garcia, he has a lot of experience and is a tough fighter. So for me to say that I think that Jermell Charlo was going to be able to knock him out, that's speaking. It's not speaking badly of Danny Garcia. It's just speaking very highly of Jermell Charlo because I think Jermell will finish the job that Errol was putting on him. Now, Errol is a different type of beast, and but he's a smaller guy than Jermell. But we'll see how it plays out, man. I like the fight. But what I'm really hoping happens first, no joke, what I think needs to happen first, though, is the fight between Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano. That's the fight that really needs to be made, and so that you get the undisputed title on the line right there. It gets over with. Jermell Charlo has wrapped up and done exactly what he wanted to do in that division. I hope that it doesn't get sidetracked with a fight, with another big money fight, right? Now, this has happened before, right? At 160 pounds, I do believe that it was Gennady Golovkin that held everything but the WBO, and maybe David Lemieux held the WBO, can't recall. But he was one fight away from being undisputed, but he decided instead of fighting for undisputed, he decided to fight Canelo Alvarez, right? Canelo Alvarez, who was moving up in weight, right? Much better fighter, obviously, than higher level than Danny Garcia, but that opportunity for undisputed at 160 went away, right? And it's not, and it has just been, the division's been split up ever since, right? I'm hoping that Jermell just goes on ahead, says, boom, I'm going to fight this kid. I'm going to beat Brian Castano and then go to Danny Garcia. But the way that the money works, the most likely scenario is the other way, that Danny Garcia fights Brian Castano first, which Danny Garcia will beat, okay? He will beat Brian Castano. I like Brian Castano. He's a tough fighter, but I think that he is kind of tailor-made for Danny Garcia. He's not particularly fleet of foot, right? He's coming at you. He's going to be there, and he lets his hands go, and Danny Garcia is an excellent counterpuncher and is going to wind up catching that dude with something really, really big. I do believe that he's going to be big enough for 154 because Danny's one of the bigger 147s. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. I think that this would be I like Danny moving up. I like Jermell. Just say it is what it is, man. I'll fight anybody. Let's make it happen. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.